right. Good morning, Rapid City. How are you all doing today? All right, first things first, I want everybody to stand up. And, stand up. My name is Whitney Rencountre II. Now put your hand on your heart and feel it. You feel how it's beating right now? Now, look to the person beside you and kiss them. You see how fast your heart starts beating? I always wonder what makes our heart beat? Well, we don't really know. And I think that's the beauty of life. There are a lot of things we don't understand, we don't know. And so go ahead, have a seat. You don't have to, hopefully you weren't sitting by your mother-in-law or your ex and you kissed them accidentally. But nonetheless, my name is Whitney Rencountre II, and I grew up on the Crow Creek Hunkpati Dakota, and I had been living in Rapid City for many years, but in the Black Hills since 1998 when I went to Black Hills State University. And I'm going to speak a little bit about weightless leadership, something that I've learned, that I've applied to my life, during my professional career, my life, and all things that I experienced. And so, right now, I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Crazy Horse Memorial Foundation, and after 75 years of Crazy Horse Memorial, and I'm the first non-family member and first Native American to be the CEO of Crazy Horse Memorial. And so, thank you. And in essence, the bottom line, a little bit about, you see the layout here. So my job is to oversee the mountain, the museum, the universities, all aspects of Crazy Horse Memorial. And when Chief Henry Standing Bear, who went to Carlisle Indian School, he learned how to write, he learned how to represent, he learned how to live in two different worlds. And when during the times from about 1883 till about 1978, the government banned Native American ways. And so in essence, Chief Henry Standing Bear, by getting an education, he wanted to represent and he wanted to educate people so that the Native American culture does not get lost. And really, that was kind of the whole, in America, we became a melting pot. So it wasn't just Native American culture. It was all cultures from Europe, cultures from throughout, that the government wanted everybody to speak the same language and act the same way. However, it was a law against Native peoples. And so Chief Henry Standing Bear saw this, and he saw an opportunity to honor his first cousin, and so he started Crazy Horse Memorial Association 6 years before Crazy Horse Monument began. And Fort Robinson wanted to hold the memorial for Crazy Horse there, but Henry Standing Bear and the family said, no, we don't want to honor where he was killed. We want to recognize and honor him in the Black Hills where he was born. And so in essence, what took place during this time was that he wanted to carve a mountain. He wanted this mountain to be dedicated to Crazy Horse so that the world would not forget about Native American culture. And by having this monument during the time of termination era in our country for Native American culture, that something will be present in the Black Hills, because he did not know what the future was going to be. And so that's where the mountain is now. This year, it took 10 years to carve Crazy Horse's face. And Crazy Horse did not want any pictures taken of himself. And so the family had to describe to Korchak Joukowsky what he looked like. And that's how he sketched it, and that's how he came up with the face. That took 10 years to carve. And in this past year, the same amount of area of Crazy Horse's face, Crazy Horse's hand, was carved the same area, surface area, in 1 year. So progress is really speeding up on the mountain. This coming weekend, Sunday, is the Volks March. We have a lot of people coming into the area. On Saturday will be the last day of the laser light show. And so, there's a lot of changes taking place. If we have some donors that want to continue the laser light show, we'll continue it on. But the focus now, instead of upping the laser light show, we want to continue to expand the museum and the university. The university is probably the place that a lot of people don't know exists. And in essence, we've had, since the building started, it was built in 2009, in 2010, the first class, we've had 400 to 450 students that have come through our program, and 77 to 82% of the students that have come through our university have either graduated college or they're still pursuing their education. So the support, because when they come to our summer program and our fall programs, we mentor and coach them until they graduate with their degrees. So the education component was something that Chief Henry Standing Bear knew was important because of his education. Knowledge is key. So I grew up on the Crow Creek Hunkpati Dakota, which is located right over here, right across the river from the dark side. But I'm just teasing my Kubichacha relatives. But nonetheless, you see the 9 reservations that exist in South Dakota. And in essence, you know, I used to go with my grandparents to Chamberlain, South Dakota, and Pierre, South Dakota. And we would stop in, get a bite to eat, go shopping. And people would look at us different and so on and so forth. We would go home and I used to wonder, why didn't we spend more time in Chamberlain or Pierre, a lot of border towns? And so, but I noticed and I realized from the lack of relationships were not formed. And so that was my upbringing on a reservation. But one of my best teachers, Mrs. Wofford, she believed in all of us. She lived on a reservation and she was from Chamberlain, kind of drove, then she moved to Fort Thompson. And in essence, to me, I said, there's a lot of good people that come from different places. So I used to try to understand. That's when I realized education really breaks down a lot of the barriers. Communication, relationships are so important in this world. And so from there, I realized the lack of understanding. People see and they realize they don't understand. You see here the travois, the teepee, the family systems, a lot of things. The beautiful culture that exists for Indigenous people. And I'm so happy CultureCon is really highlighting Native American culture in this beautiful land. That is when I realized, when I went to Black Hill State University, I started to be able to share my culture, because we all know in universities, most people are open to learn. They're thirsting for more knowledge. And so from there, I really helped. It was comfortable for me to be able to express my culture, my way of life, and the teaching that I had while still getting an education. I would walk around campus, and there all races, different backgrounds would say, hello, how are you doing? So on and so forth. And that's when I started to realize that there's people in every race, every culture, that make good choices and bad choices. There's no one bad race, or one bad family, or one bad anything, religion, political system, whatever the case may be, that there's good and bad decisions in every race, every culture. So with that enlightened mind, I wanted to pick up my grandparents, my family, and I wanted to bring them from Fort Thompson to Black Hill State University and say, look what exists in the bigger world. And that's when I understood the reason why we are the way we are is because the government did not educate us on what happened historically. All we know is that there's division, there's racial tension. We did not have the ability to form these relationships. And that's when I understood knowledge really is the key. Educating ourselves. And so I worked with Dr. Ronnie Tice, who was one of the original members of Porcupine Singers. He was from Austria, and he came to America, and he was adopted into the Porcupine Singers of the Oglala Lakota Oyate. And we used to do powwow 101 for dummies on campus. Just the basics about powwows. And I saw people want to learn more. And they said, wow, we didn't know this existed. And that's when I started to learn. You break down the barriers when you communicate, when you spend time with other people, you get out of your comfort zone, you learn, you start to, that's why the term, don't judge another person until you've walked a mile in their shoes. But in our culture, we say moccasins. And if you have some holes in your moccasins, you better patch them up because, yeah. But nonetheless, that's when I realized. So in my career, I started, and it's good to see a couple of my brothers, Stephen Yellowhawk, Rob Yellowhawk. We worked here. This program, the Ateapi program, is around 30 years old here in Rapid City. And this particular career of working with students in our city here is really to help teach the importance of the family systems, to mentor, to coach young students that come from the reservations that are trying to make it in the city. And so we serve over 1,000 students a year, mentoring, coaching, helping them, encouraging them. And so let's give a round of applause to the Ateapi program and all the mentors through the years that have really stepped up. And this is what it's all about. When we work together, when we promote the values, the virtues, we give our students the tools that they need to succeed. So that was a really big inspiration in my life. And then while I was running the Ateapi program at the high school level and then the middle school level, I had all these mentors. I would try to tell my staff to do this, to do that, early on when I first became a coordinator. And sometimes they would come back to me and say, well, why aren't you doing it? And they would question me as the coordinator. And that's when I realized that in order for myself, in order to get buy-in from my staff, that I had to role model that. People are not going to listen to you, what you say. They are going to watch what you do. And so from there, I took on this journey of really personal growth. Looking at myself instead of judging other people. What can I do to work on my character defects? What can I do to try to become a better person, a better father, a better husband? And, you know, my wife and I, we met at Black Hills State University. She came from Standing Rock, I came from Crow Creek, and I was driving around one day and I saw her walking in the streets of Spearfish, so I picked her up. She was lost. Hey, just teasing, you heard her speak a little earlier today. But we have 4 beautiful daughters, and we'll be married 23 years this coming up April 14th of 2024. So the journey of self-growth wasn't just because of my job as a coordinator or my relationship with my wife, with my beautiful daughters. Because I tell you what, those of you that are raising teenage daughters, give yourselves a round of applause. That is not easy. Very difficult. However, the bottom line is by taking on the willingness to work on yourself makes a difference in your world, makes a difference in all aspects. That's when I started to see the teamwork of the staff that I was supervising and the other opportunities. So while I was working for Ateapi, I was asked by one of my college friends to serve on the board of Visit Rapid City. And from there, you know, I was like, why am I sitting on this board with all these high-level people in Rapid City, so on and so forth? What can I bring to the table? Tourism, I don't know a lot about it, so on and so forth. But when I was sitting in the meetings, the things that I was learning about myself, about my own character defects, about trying to be a better person, I was applying that to the board. And that's when you start to learn that you start to do the right things for yourself. What that does is you start creating better habits. You start doing things in a way that elevates your life. You start to see and realize the bottom line for me is I figured out you have to focus on the big picture of life. And when you do that, you won't get distracted. Your ego, the things that distract you in life, you focus on what's in the future and what your perspective and perception is. And so by doing this work, you see, I grew up in a single-parent home on the reservation, and my mother worked. I hardly got to spend time with her. She worked 2 jobs to take care of us. And I spent a lot of time with my grandparents. And when I would see and watch what they would do, that's when I start to learn. There's a lot of leaders everywhere in this room. By watching, you can apply some of the things that they do to your life. Not everything, because everybody has a different story. But I would watch and I learned from the wisdom and the calmness and the belief that my grandparents exhibited. And one time my grandparents, I just loved them to death, and they taught me how to sing, how to dance, how to carry on my traditions and my culture. At one time, my grandparents were celebrating their 50th anniversary. And my grandfather walks in, and he walks in. My grandmother, obviously my grandfather was not very romantic. So there's my grandmother cooking their anniversary meal. And so my grandpa walks in, he feels a little guilty from working outside. And he said, "After 50 years, I'm so happy to be married to you, tried and true." My grandmother was crabby, and she said, "What did you say?" He said, "After 50 years, I'm so happy to be married to you, tried and true." She said, "What?" "After 50 years, I'm so happy to be married to you, tried and true." So she put down her spatula and she said, "Well, after 50 years, I'm tired of you too." And so that's when I started to realize we misunderstand each other at times, especially on emails, so on and so forth. It's always good to clarify, ask questions. And so by doing these things, that's when I start to understand why. So that's what I went through in my life, what I call self-growth. Realizing that if we choose to work on ourselves, because really, that's the only person we can change in this world. We cannot change other people. The harder you try, the less they want to change. They'll tune out. They won't want to listen to you, especially if you're not living your life the right way. And so, by living and working on yourself, you start to understand, you start to realize that if you focus on yourself, see, a lot of times people will say, "Man, I can't get my partner to sober up, or my partner to do things the right way, or my child to do their homework, or other people basically to do anything." They say, "Well, focus on yourself. If you help yourself, you can change. You can create, inspire change." That's when I learned, by observing and realizing, a lot of times you don't realize you are a big part of the problem. You might be the one enabling others. You might be the reason why they're doing and just not really being responsible or focusing or getting the work done in their lives. But when you work on yourself, you then have better boundaries, you communicate better, you have the ability to inspire them to change, to hold themselves accountable. And so that's when you start to make the change. So that's where my self-growth began in that regard. And so learning to become a leader, that's when I was sitting in these Visit Rapid City board meetings and started to serve on other boards of directors. And I realized that I had to get out of the way. It wasn't me that was the most important. That it wasn't because I'm Whitney Rencountre, I did this is why I'm on these positions. So when you're in a position of leadership, when you start thinking about the whole, and you start thinking about where you want to get in life, that's when you start making objective decisions. Your decisions are in a way to help inspire, to help be responsible, create healthy boundaries, to do the right thing in life. And so that's when learning how to become a leader became evident. And there are times in our lives where maybe, let's say, we're offered a position, a prestigious position, or a position of, and so being CEO of Crazy Horse Memorial, the position being offered, and I realized I never thought that position would ever be available. I thought the Joukowsky family would be in that position for a time, 75 years. But when the opportunity came, I was already the associate director at the university. And so it just happened. I went on this, I applied for the CEO position. And when I got the position, to me, it's not about having CEO by my name. Because all it really means is that now I have more responsibility. Now I have a people are going to be looking at me from a lot of different places. They always say it's easy to sit in the stands and throw things at whoever's in the arena. But when you're in the arena, that's when you have to have things in order in your life. That's when you have to focus on the big picture. And so my focus is now on the big picture, not only being CEO, being a husband, being a father, and all the other opportunities that have come my way. And to me, these are blessings because I made a decision to work on myself. I made a decision to not let the ego drive what I do. In essence, you start to become a facilitator, the responsibilities that come. And so that is what being a leader means to me. So weightlessness, well, what does weightlessness mean? I know it was one of my favorite teachings comes from Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee says, be like water. Be flexible in your mind, in your body, your spirit, everything that is. Because you see, water will not be stopped. When water flows from the mountains and it's going to get to the ocean, there is nothing that's going to stop it. I mean, you can dam it up, so on and so forth, but it's going to break. You got to let it through. And so by being flexible, that's when I start to realize when you form relationships, when you communicate, when you do things and then you create these good habits in life, that's when you start to see change. You can be the change. And so weightless leadership and weightlessness can apply to your life in all aspects. And there's a role for everyone in this world. A lot of people, they make a decision to want to create change, and it's the difficult life, and that's awesome. That's great. But a lot of times we don't realize when we make a decision to want others to change, and we wait and we push and we push and we push, that's when we get sicknesses. That's when a lot of health issues, a lot of things are closed, the opportunities pass us by. And so weightless leadership, weightlessness in life is to realize you stay focused on the big picture of what you want to accomplish in this world. And so weightlessness is something that has helped me in this world, in this life, to be able to facilitate, to be able to be, coming from a boy growing up in a single parent home and living that way of life and not knowing why the world is the way it is. But through education, I realized anyone can be a leader. Anyone can create change. You just have to be willing to take the steps to create that and to allow that to happen. And so, in closing, I just want to say that in essence, I appreciate this opportunity to share. And I know I have a big job in life in general to be the CEO of Crazy Horse Memorial. But I know change happens at the speed of trust. So you have to do things in a methodical way. And I learned that one of my favorite sayings is we do better when we know better. A majority of these people in this world don't know why there's fractured relationships between cultures, between natives and non-natives. But when you educate, when you communicate, spend time together like this, then you create the opportunity to dialogue. And a lot of times people will come at us with anger for whatever culture. People have come to me and say, well, do you believe this? I let them just share what they got to share, and I don't engage. A lot of times if you do that, boom, then they're not done arguing and fighting because there's no argument and fight. And then they're open. Why is this person calm? Why is this person not engaging in a fight? And that's when you realize more can get accomplished in this world when we find our place and we have weightlessness and we're like water and we're going to get to where we're going to get to. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for allowing me a little bit of time to share with you, to each and every one of you, and hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you very much.